Hey everybody, Chris Avery with you on a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. The 2019 regular season schedule was just released. The voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith's going to join me for immediate reaction. It's a slate that includes 4 primetime games and several late season divisional matchups. I'll also get Money's thoughts on the switch to the Powder Blues and the 2019 NFL Draft. All right, it's just been released. It's like Christmas in April here. The Chargers 2019 schedule. Here to break it down with me, the voice of the team, Matt Money Smith. And Money, it's been a minute, brother. How are you?
I'm well. Yeah, it's been a little bit of an off season. Although a little bit of football in my off season. I'd rather there hadn't been any football in my off season the way things turned out. But yeah, it's good to be back with you, man.
It's good, man. I'm excited to break the schedule down. But I think like the second biggest news of the day is the schedule in your household, right? Because I just saw on Instagram that your daughter signed a letter of intent with Dartmouth to play lacrosse.
Yeah, today, April 17th is National Signing Day for a lot of sports, and lacrosse is part of that. So yeah, she very proud of her. She worked very hard and actually walked away from one scholarship that she had been locked into for a couple of years because it just didn't feel right when she went on her official. And, you know, that was something that I almost advised against, you know, because there's not a lot of those scholarships out there, especially that late in the process. And it was very brave of her to do, and she was rewarded for it. Still had a couple tournaments left, and Dartmouth, you know, was excited about bringing her in. So she's a smart girl. She's worked really hard. So to be able to me, you know, female sports, when you're not going to be, you know, maybe playing professionally or in the Olympics, I don't know if there's anything bigger or better than the Ivy League. So I'm very, very excited for her. And it's a really good team. I think they're top 10 right now, or they might be 13, I think, in the nation right now. Just a big win over Penn over the weekend. So sorry, don't want to do too much.
No, it's good, man.
Proud father.
The floor is yours.
Very proud papa today. Yes, very, very big day in the Smith household. She started playing lacrosse when she was in 8th grade after a bad gymnastics injury. Got her out of that sport and was able to rally and figure it out. And like I said, you know, busted her tail. So for all of you listening that there may be parents or something, it was it's a tough road. It's a heck of a time commitment traveling all over the country. Obviously there's a financial commitment, but if you got kids that want to chase that dream, man, it is a special day to see that smile on their face and that emotion as the coaches kind of giving their speech about what kind of kid you have and what they've meant to their high school program and how proud they are. They're going to be playing at the next level. It really was neat. So I cannot stress enough in those dark times and the tough times, because there's plenty of them. You know, many a times crying in the car or flying to Baltimore or wherever we were going, where, you know, you question it and man, was it worth it? Worth it in, you know, 10, 100 times over. Big
day for the household, man. Shout out to Peyton. It's fantastic news, man. Let's get into this thing, Money. I think the overarching themes here, the 30,000-foot view, if you will, 4 primetime games. They didn't have any to start the year last year. 7 of the first 10 come against non-playoff teams. And then you look at the end of the schedule, 5 of the last 7 games come against AFC West opponents. So November, December are going to be huge for this team. Your initial thoughts on this schedule.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, the first, I guess just as a broadcaster, the first thing that jumped out at me is NBC must have really liked that Saturday night game against Baltimore. They must have loved the way it looked, the way it felt, because we had heard when they had been playing in Carson, you know, there at Dignity Health Sportsplex, as it is called now, that it was going to logistically be tough to do everything that they wanted to do on their broadcast. Well, the NFL forced them to try it. And by getting 2 Sunday nighters against Pittsburgh and Minnesota, I'm guessing, and you know, I watched that thing back on TV, and it looked great. And it is a cool venue. It's a unique venue. So that's the first thing that jumped out at me. And you know what? I thought that was the best crowd, best atmosphere, even with the game being as flat as it was to start. I thought it was electric in that place before kickoff.
I agree.
More than any other game over the 2 years that we've been calling them there. So I'm excited to have 2 huge games against, you know, long-time NFL franchises like the Steelers and Vikings on Sunday night.
Let's get into this thing just game by game. You know, we can buzz through some of these. Some have some fun storylines. In week 1, Indianapolis Colts, a playoff team last year. Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers, the Darius Leonard, Derwin James storyline. A lot of fun stuff in this one.
Well, to me, more than anything, this was a matchup that a lot of people thought was going to happen in the AFC Championship game. As crazy as it sounds now, looking back at, how it ended, Chargers in New England, but a lot of people thought the Chargers matched up well, thought they were going to be the team to knock off the Pats and end that dynasty, and that the Colts, because of how balanced they were, the defense they played, the running game that they had found, that they were going to be able to knock off the Chiefs. And obviously it didn't happen. Both the Chiefs and Patriots won, but I think this is, it sounds stupid, and we're just two idiots talking about it, as opposed to players that got to suit up and play in it. But to me, it's to some degree kind of one of those measuring stick litmus test games. Okay, what are we? Is there momentum from last year? If you can put it on the Colts, or you can just get three, I think it's a tone, right away, especially looking at the four that you have a team that was one of the final four in the AFC straight out the gate at your place, and a team that has its eyes set on making it to the Super Bowl after taking a huge step last year based on the upgrade they put in the offseason, and a lot of young guys that they're going to be looking to take a step. I think getting a win here, and I feel like we had the same conversation last year about the Chiefs and the Chargers in the opener, and a gauge based on what was on their schedule to gauge and maybe set a tone for the entire 2019 campaign.
Yeah, Money, I look at the last 2 years too, and they opened with the Broncos in Coach Lynn's first year on the road. And then that Chiefs game, we talked up that Chiefs game big time, saying that it's not a must win, but it kind of is. I think this is just, it's so imperative to get out to a fast start. And even last year, going 12-4, you start 1-2, you lose to a rival. It kind of took the air out until week 2 when you go to Buffalo and win. So this is a team that you may have to see again in the playoffs. And again, I think the Frank Reich storyline is fun too, because he knows Phillip really well. Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, used to be with the Chargers. So not only are there some ties on the field, but also in the coaching staff.
No question. And I think, those are ties, like you said, Nick Sirianni, the OC, Frank Reich, former OC. There's those connections. But I think just for the fans, hey, man, you got Andy Luck versus Phil Rivers.
Yes.
I mean, it's awesome.
That's a treat.
What a great way to start. You got Malik Hooker, roaming that backfield, trying to do what he can against Phil Rivers. You got Derwin James, just with that freaking nose trying to sniff out Andy Luck at the line of scrimmage. Like, it's an awesome football game to have to start the season. And
Money, Derwin talked this week about not winning Rookie of the Year, and he's very, very complimentary of Darius Leonard. But I tell you what, in the back of his mind, he probably wants to prove something in week 1. He got a little slighted, in my opinion.
Oh, no question. I mean, I thought, I know, nobody at the Chargers will say it, but I will. I mean, Darius Leonard's Cato June, and it's nothing against him. He played great. You have to make the tackles, but that's the Colts defense. It's the same Colts defense they ran when they had Peyton Manning there, and they funnel all players to one side and expect that player at that position to make the tackles, and they're going to pile up gaudy stats. But again, he's got to make the plays. I get it, and he's a great player. He snatched the starting spot. He kept the starting spot. But I do think it was a stat award. I really do. I think if you're just talking about straight impact on the field and you remove the statistics from it, anybody that watches football can see how Derwin James affects every single snap on defense and is one of those players that the quarterback is trying to account for every single time he's about to drop back.
Yeah, so week 1's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to Andrew Luck versus Phillip Rivers. Week 2, nothing new for the Chargers in the Eastern time zone at Detroit. Year 2 under Matt Patricia. The Lions were 6-10 last year. And Money, this is the first of 4 games against the NFC North.
Yeah, and, Detroit's inside, so when you got to go out to the NFC North for 2 of them, they caught a break. I know you'll get to that Chicago game a little later when they decided to schedule them. So still, I think, it is the Eastern time zone, and they do have a lot of those at Miami, at Jacksonville. Chicago is Central Time, Tennessee Central Time, but, that's just the deal of being a West Coast team, right? You're going to have to deal with those. Again, I feel like it's, on paper, a good matchup for them. A lot of noise coming out of Detroit about the relationship between the players and Matt Patricia, and, whether or not there's some carryover there or where the Lions figure themselves in this NFC North mix, which is obviously very similar to the AFC West. You have 3 teams, You could pick any one of those three and feel pretty good about it. I mean, obviously in the AFC West, a lot of people picking either the Chargers or the Chiefs, but between the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers, you're not going to say boo to anyone that says, I think this, blank team will win it. And the Lions are trying to carve out, a path to prove everybody else wrong with their last place schedule, and the hopes that they can get back into that mix. So, this is going to be a big one for them. It's a home game. It's a statement game, no question. But I will take, I love this team on the road. I mean, we saw it the year before. We especially saw it last year. And to have a road opponent be a team that finished in last place last season with a little bit of change, but not a whole lot, I think sets up very well for the first trip, away from Los Angeles.
Agreed. And it's weird to look at Phillip Rivers against the Lions because he's only faced them 3 times. He's 2-1 all time. They beat the Lions in 2015, so not a opponent you see every day for the Chargers. Going back to L.A. in Week 3, Houston, and this is another fun one, man. It's another playoff team. You got Deshaun Watson versus Phillip. I think the highlight for me is DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen on the field together. 2 of the best route runners, 2 of the best receivers in the game.
Yeah, no question. And for me, it's going to be, and I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. We don't know who they're going to draft. There's still some people out there in free agency. We know how Tom Telesco tends to operate. Is Forrest Lamp going to be on the interior of the line? Is Sam Tevi still at right tackle? But, this was an offensive line that was challenged. And when you've got, I know there's still some contract issues there and they're trying to figure it out, but I'll just assume that Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt are going to be back there, and Whitney Merciless, I think, is still there. I remember right. So, a heck of a test for that O-line. And probably, kind of that. And look, the Colts are good on the defensive line, but, they had some found money there, and Marcus Hunt. And, this will be this will give you a very good idea of what the Chargers are looking at in front of Phillip Rivers. Because I think a lot of that was masked last year. A lot of the challenges were masked by Rivers and his ability to, overcome a pass rush or create plays where other quarterbacks simply would not be able to. So to have Watt and Clowney and that front come to LA, I think will quickly give us an idea of what we're looking at with that group of 5 in front of Phillip.
Yeah, this is no question the best pass rush they're going to see during the first quarter of the season. So the first 4 games, we talk about Clowney and Watt. And this is another Watt brother reunion, Money. JJ was hurt the last time the Texans played the Chargers. So Derek got to face his one brother in Pittsburgh last year. He'll get to face JJ this time.
Yeah, he sure did. And it's a fun family, and I keep telling Derek, I don't know why it doesn't go by DJ. I mean, you got DJ, you got JJ. His middle name
Keep it consistent.
Go by DJ. Let's go, man. DJ Watt. Let's make it happen.
Let's go.
So, yeah, look, I'd love it. I would love to see a little play action. Freaking go on. Cut him down. Cut your brother down.
We didn't really see that in the Pittsburgh game. I want to see that against the Texans.
Yep, we did not, and darn it, we should have. I'm in the boat with you, Chris. I want it. I want some Watt-on-Watt action.
All right, Week 4, Miami in September, which is always a kind of a wild card month when it comes to weather. Fitzmagic in the mix. I look at a return for Mike Pouncey. I know it's kind of a new administration there with Brian Flores and company, but this is a team that 2 years ago kind of put a wrench in the Chargers' season in 2017, beating them 19-17, first game in Los Angeles for the Chargers. Maybe a little bit of revenge here in Week 4, Money.
Well, not a lot of the same players, obviously.
A lot of turnover.
Miami team, look, this is you just hope you don't get bit by the old Fitzmagic because it's coming. There's going to be 1 or 2 games where old Fitzmagic lets it roll for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the rest are going to be, 3-pick games, and they're going to go to some other quarterback. But it is a team that looks as though they are in transition, they are in rebuild, whatever you want to call it. And you still have to travel to the other side of the country. There's obviously still a lot of challenges in doing that. It's still a team that's got some solid players on defense, but it's kind of what before we got this thing rolling. But I was, you and I were talking a little bit and. I just like the way the first 5 line up. The first 5 line up well. And to me, this is a game where, you would hope, based on the personnel and the way things look on paper, which is stupid to look at, but I'll say it anyway, that, maybe Tyrod Taylor gets a quarter in this game, I think would be nice, especially considering what you got following it up, and that's kind of, I hate doing that because you have no idea what a team is going to be, but, you start your AFC West schedule the following week, and we know that Coach Lynn likes to play this season in quarters.
Yep.
He talks about coming out of a quarter and to maybe have the ability to hang a 3-1 or even a 4-0 on the first quarter of the season. That's a heck of a way to set a tone, and not one that we've seen the Chargers be able to do these last 2 years under Coach Lynn.
Yeah, it'd be important to stack some W's here in the first quarter of the season because Week 5, as you said, is the Denver Broncos, the first AFC West game for the Chargers. Again, this is a team with a lot of new faces, including its head coach and quarterback. You got Vic Fangio, the new head coach, Joe Flacco, going to be under center. And this is a game, Money, where I look at when the Broncos came to Dignity Health last year, Chargers owed them a little bit of a payback. Case Keenum, I know he's not there anymore, but led that last second drive to beat the Chargers.
It was a bad game. It was a brutal game for the Chargers, and we knew it in the moment that it happened. Set to go up by, I think it would have been 3 scores. Phillip throws that pick.
Yep.
And now it's a game, and it just got away from him. And that was a huge loss, and you knew it in the moment. And I think, I'm not saying it was a fluke. I bring it up because that's what having Bradley Chubb and Von Miller can do to you, and it can do it to anybody. It's not just Phillip. Look, that is a pass rush that can heat you up. And again, to me, like when I look at we talk about the quarters, and I guess I'm bringing it up again. I think Coach Lynn has just maybe pounded it into me here, but you look at that second quarter. I mentioned the first quarter of the season and how favorable it looks on paper. When you see that second quarter, Denver, Pittsburgh at home, Titans, Bears on the road.
It's not easy.
That's 4 really good football teams. And, at least for whatever we think of the Broncos offense, we know what that defense is because it's got Von Miller and Bradley Chubb up front. So to me, that's another one of those tone setter games. Hey, it's the first game of our second quarter. We know the Steelers are coming in here, and man, are they going to be pissed because of what happened last year and the Chargers getting the first victory in Pittsburgh history, not Heinz Field, Pittsburgh history, when the team had at least a 16-point lead in the second half to get that comeback win. The Steelers certainly will remember that. They're a very good team. So I think winning, beating the Broncos, it's obviously important. Every game is important. They were 12-4 last year and had to go on the road, for a wild card game. So we know how important getting victories every single week, how important that is. But just the way that the next 3 line up in that second quarter, this is a big one. It's
a little hairy in the second quarter. We'll slide right into the first primetime game of the season for the Chargers against the Steelers. It's that rematch, and you said that the NBC folks liked how that looked. They probably also liked how that Steelers-Chargers game looked last year. This is a new-look Steelers team. It's a homecoming for Juju. You got Big Ben versus Phillip again, the class of 2004, and a rematch of that game. You said it, 33-30, Badgley hitting that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, and, we don't know. Look, we're going to know by then, right, what the Steelers look like without Antonio Brown and how much attention he draws and how important he was to that team. Now, we already know what they look like without Le'Veon Bell, because we saw it last year, right? What I think is going to be able to be sorted out, because like that, right, you're 6 games into the season now you kind of know. You know what a team is. You know whether or not that, the Steelers are going to revolt against Big Ben if they were Antonio and Le'Veon and you can't recover from this kind of thing, or if that was a galvanizing moment. If that was, hey, these guys were me guys and we are we guys. By then you're going to figure that out. And because I don't know the answers, I cannot figure out what Pittsburgh is going to be this season. Because it certainly seems like there's a lot of barking about how they got to stay together, how there's no outside noise. All of that stuff leads me to believe, oh yeah, there's issues. Because if there weren't, you wouldn't have all these people trying to say there's no problem and we got to stick together and all that sort of stuff. So it's hard for me to kind of project what this is going to look like, how tough of a game this is going to be. because I don't know. Look, that was a team that had more talent than maybe anybody in the AFC last year, and they didn't even make the playoffs, and they completely fell apart. So it's just it's hard for me to figure out, I think is what I'm getting at. I keep saying the same thing. It's hard for me to figure out, what the Steelers are until I see whether or not Mike Tomlin can coach these guys up, can get them to move past, Pro Bowlers, multiple time Pro Bowlers leaving in the offseason.
Buddy, it's almost, as we talk, it's almost silly to talk about some of this stuff in April. It's so much fun, and I know everybody enjoys it. But, just think of the impact that Derwin made last year, and Uchenna in that game against the Ravens, and Justin Jackson with his performance against the Steelers last year. These guys were rookies last year, and we sit here a week from the draft. We don't know who the Chargers are going to draft. We don't know who the Steelers are going to draft. There could be some guys that play a big role, especially you look at the track record of Telesco and company, that could play a big role in some of these games. And it's funny for us to talk about it now, knowing that this roster is going to look pretty different.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes for all of the opponents as well, right?
Yep.
We don't know what the Broncos have a top 10 pick. Who knows who that player is going to be or what that player can be. We know how deep this draft is on the defensive line, in the secondary. And like you said, on the Chargers side of the ball, yeah, I mean, Telesco, it's one of the best track records in all of football. I mean, especially when you talk about first rounders and what he's been able to do. And like you said, the impact that Derwin James had last year. And I think we're also forgetting the fact that Kaiser White got hurt, and how good he looked. I mean, he was a starter, and he was an athletic starter and was able to do things that Gus Bradley wanted to do that he could no longer do with that defense once he went down. So, yeah, no question. I mean, you hit it on the head. We're talking about it. It's fun to talk about because it's our first look at how everything lays out as you're trying to project what a record is and home field advantage in the playoffs and all that, and it can all get blown to heck in a half second. We know that, but at the same time, we got it. So why not kick it around? And we're going to do it again in a week in 10 days after they get their 7 draft picks or however many they manage to amass and try to project how those guys are going to contribute, right?
No doubt. Week 7 at Tennessee. Money, this is fun because it's a rematch and we don't have to go to London for it. It's 2019. It was 2019. And I want to get your thoughts on these powder blue uniforms because one of the more memorable moments for me was that AP 2-point conversion tip that won the game for the Chargers in London. Just your reaction to those unis being the primary now.
Well, I don't know if this will get me in trouble at all, but anytime I was on the road and had the ear of John Spanos, there was uniform talk. I'm a big uniform guy. Always have been. I always think I have all the answers of who wears what the best combo would be for this team, and it is something that I impressed upon John Spanos that I would love to see happen, that I would really like to see one of two things, and that is the powders or the late 70s, early 80s Dan Fouts era Royals.
The Royals,
become the blue of color. And I did get the sense from John, because it was their original uniform in Los Angeles when the franchise first started here. And one of the things I love about John, there are many things, but one that I really do, because he is very much like me, he's a uniform guy, is he said, if we do this, I'm going to insist we do it with gold face masks. And I said, I'm in. If you do it with gold face masks, I'm in for the powders. And I will abandon my Royals if you promise me it's a gold face mask.
That's the cherry on top, Money.
It is. You know what? So you say it's the cherry on top. I say it's the foundation on which the house is built.
Okay, there you go.
I love the powder. I love that color. It is a unique color as far as the powder, bebe, light, whatever, however you want to describe the light blue, the powder blue, but it is such a unique color. But to me, to have a colored face mask in the NFL is really special, because when you look around, there ain't many. So to be able to pull off a gold face mask, I think, is really what separates it.
It's so clean. And, I think of under Anthony Lynn, they're 4-0 when they wear the powders. And I think of Thanksgiving the 28-6 victory against the Cowboys.
Sure.
I think of that London game. I think of the 21-0 shutout of the Broncos, shutting them out for the first time in 25 years. And there was another game too that it escapes me at this moment. But I just think of winning right now over the last 2 years wearing the powder. So at Tennessee,
yeah. What I said to John, I said, hey, look, you've got the best uniform in the NFL. It's the best one.
There's no question.
Nothing better. Go use it. Don't put it to use. The only thing he didn't take, I wanted the gold pants, which I guess is too much, But hey, I like the disco. Let's go disco gold, baby. But that was kind of my final point to him. I was like, you have the best uniforms in the NFL. There is nothing better if you go with powder. Why not do it? So I am stoked. All right, to Tennessee, at Tennessee, Nashville. Let's go. I love that city.
I have on my notes, great road trip city. That's one of my takeaways.
Big fan. You're going to be out there in a week for the draft, I would assume. So you'll be able to lay the groundwork for it.
Oh no, I'm going to be with you at the Santa Monica Pier,
right.
Money. Yeah,
right.
I'm not going.
You are. What am I thinking? We got a Chargers draft party. I forgot about that. So yeah, Nashville's a great town. And it's look. What did you say? 20-19 in London. It's a tough team. They will bust you up. They play sound, stout defense. They have the personality of their coach, Mike Vrabel. He's a great coach. It's a tough team. They certainly found something with Derrick Henry there toward the end of the year, where they started running rush shot all over people. I don't know where that was in the earlier in the season, but heck, we barely got any Derrick Henry shown to us when we were out there calling the game. So I think it'll be a little bit of a different looking team and a lot more Derrick Henry. And who knows if Marcus will be out there or not, because the guy, has not been able to stay healthy. When he is healthy, he's a load to deal with when he uses those legs. We saw that out there in London. So I expect it to be a very tough contest.
Yeah, this second quarter of the season, Denver, it's Denver. It's always going to be tough. It's an AFC West game. Pittsburgh didn't make the playoffs. Pittsburgh's going to be tough. Tennessee barely missed the playoffs. Tennessee's going to be tough. And then week 8 at Chicago, I think my top takeaway here is homecoming for money in Chicago, October 27th.
Well, as someone who spent 17 years there, I came to LA before I was even an adult for college because I was young. But October's still pleasant for the most part. Now, my old man just sent me a photo back at the old homestead of snow on the ground in April. So who the heck knows what happens these days with the weather patterns. But I think that's a big one, that you're not going to Chicago in the middle of December with the lake effect and you're playing at night and it's 30 degrees below zero, because man, is that not fun. And remember last year, Chargers never got hit with weather. The coldest we had was, the coldest that the team had was in New England for that AFC divisional round game. And it wasn't even that cold. It was cold, but it wasn't freezing. So the fact that you get to avoid that your December trips, save the one to Kansas City, and that they have that last year too. But your December trips are to Jacksonville and Kansas City. That's a pretty big win to miss that. In Chicago, look, the Bears, Mitch Trubisky's got to prove it to me, man. You roll in there with Bosa and Melvin Ingram, and let's see it. Let's see it. Prove it to me. Prove it to the world that you can win a game. Because as far as I could tell last year, Trubisky was still, for the most part, in let's just not mess this up. Let the defense, take care of business. All I need you to do is stay out of the way, and we can get some victories.
Yeah, talk about a pass rusher's dream here. You got Khalil Mack and Floyd on one side. You got Bosa and Ingram and Nwosu on the other. And I had to do a double take when I read this. The Chargers haven't won in Chicago since the first time they played the Bears, October 18th, 1970. So we're talking 49 years. So that's exercising some demons if they can get a win here.
Yeah, and there have been some really bad Bear teams over the course of that time frame. You would assume. Obviously, when it's not in your division, you're going to rotate. Basically, you're not going to travel to Chicago, but once every whatever it is, 6 years. So it's not like there's a ton of opportunities there. But yeah, what a perfect time to excise those demons and get a victory on the road as a West Coast team in a cold weather climate, even though, again, right around Halloween, it won't be too cold, I don't think. Typically at that time, still get a little bit of the leaves changing, I think, by then. So should be a pleasant noon kick, a nice nooner.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
There in Chicago.
I'm excited about that
Very
one.
much so.
Get to the Chi for the weekend, and then the Chargers got to turn around, go back to L.A., and this is going to be a big one too. The Green Bay Packers, their third NFC North game of the year at this point. They're 1-10 all time against the Packers, and Phillip Rivers, Aaron Rodgers, this will only be the third time they've gone head-to-head here. It should be a good one. It looks like it's in that Romo Nance window, 125 CBS.
Oh, you got to believe it. I mean, no question. That'll be a Romo Nance game. You get Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers on the field. You don't know how many more times you're going to get that because you would assume moving forward now, you're talking about either 3 years from now, and who knows if or 4 years from now because they're an NFC team. 4 years from now, and we don't know if Philip's going to be around 4 years from now. We know he wants to coach some high school football, so whenever he decides he's going to want to do that, this may be the last time we get these two guys on the field unless it's a Super Bowl. So it'll be special. It'll be another one of those special games, and we had a couple of them last year. And I think anytime you get something like this, you do want to make sure you pay attention because, again, we don't know if we'll ever get it again. Two of the best quarterbacks to have ever played the game. Again, don't know what the Packers are going to be without Mike McCarthy. It's been forever, and it's so, is LaFleur more than just a guy who carried Sean McVay's bag, or, is he just being hired on another guy's reputation? I do know this, Aaron Rodgers does not suffer fools. So if it goes bad, it's going to go bad in a hurry.
It'll go bad before week 9, I think, at that point.
Exactly. And if it's going good, and, what a lot of the murmurs were that McCarthy became disinterested and was calling the same plays he was calling 10 years ago, and they never adapted, and it drove Aaron Rodgers crazy. Well, then look out, because that dude's the Kraken. And, if he has been held back by the, incapability of a head coach that did not adapt to a new NFL and did not adjust play calling that any defensive coordinator can catch up to, we certainly know the type of talent that Rodgers possesses. He's the best thrower I have ever seen in the history of football. And he can tear you up in a hurry. So I guess what I'm hoping for is Coach LaFleur, the Jag, just a guy, not some sort of bright offensive mind that's going to really broaden Aaron Rodgers' ability to do even more damage.
After this week 9, there's a 6-week stretch, which is very similar to last year, where they're not back in Los Angeles for a football game. They go Thursday night, week 10, at Oakland, and this is the first time they'll see the Raiders this year. They'll see Antonio Brown, they'll see Tyrell Williams, and a host of new players in Oakland. And the Chargers, since moving back to L.A., they're 4-0 against the Raiders.
Yeah, and, again, a team that we don't know a lot about. I mean, my gosh, they did a heck of a job in free agency. Getting a left tackle that did a hell of a job on Joey Bosa, on Melvin Ingram in the AFC Championship, in the AFC divisional game. And we know how leaky Colton Miller was all season. He was the worst left tackle in the game, based on holding penalties, sacks, pressures, hits allowed. So they get him off that left side, move him to the right side. So I guess I would say who's ever opposite him, get after it, please.
Yep.
Because Trent Brown seemed to be able to do a number on the other one. So you got that. Obviously, Antonio Brown's a nightmare to deal with. And they're pretty good on the interior of that line. Now, is it a shootout? Are they going, what do those 3 first-round picks look like? Is it someone that can come in and contribute immediately like a Quinnen Williams and Ed Oliver, a Josh Allen at that number 1, at that number 4 spot? What do the 2 picks in the 20s, provide? Is it a safety in a corner? Is it a linebacker? What are they going to, because it's going to be all defense. It has to be. I think they had fewer sacks than like 3 or 4 guys in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's, and whether or not you can do that in the draft, I don't know. We saw it with Bosa his rookie year. We saw it last year with Bradley Chubb. It seems like pass rushers can come in and make an immediate impact. We saw it with Khalil Mack and Jadeveon Clowney their rookie years. So, it's going to be a completely different team than we've seen up to this point. So it's just kind of hard to project what to expect from that one.
It is. And you look at free agency and, how a team like the Chargers use it, right? Thomas Davis, Tyrod Taylor come in, you take care of your own. And then you see how the Raiders are using it. And granted, I know it's a rebuild, but they have a completely new squad. And, I mean, they are signing guys left and right. I mean, I think it was in the double digits in the month of March. So it's just two teams in very different stages right now. So you're right. It's hard to tell what the Oakland Raiders are going to look like in Week 10. All right, guys, before we get to the second half of the schedule, a reminder that the 2019 LA Chargers draft party is just a week away. It's at the Santa Monica Pier, 4 to 9 p.m., Thursday, April 25th, and tickets are free. Go to Chargers.com for your free tickets. Watch the NFL draft on giant LED screens. You can meet Chargers players, alumni. ABC7's Ashley Brewer is going to host. I'll be in the mix as well. Again, Thursday, April 25th, 4 to 9 p.m., Santa Monica Pier. Go to Chargers.com and get your free tickets.
Just kind of going back to your point about free agency, I think, just to touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
I think two extremes that I didn't expect. I thought the Chargers would do more. I was surprised the Raiders did so much. It did surprise me a little bit. And I thought that, Mike Mayock and John Gruden said something that was very telling, and that is, the free agency can allow you to fill some needs so you don't have to worry about them in the draft. You can just take the best player available. Now, we know they didn't fill all their needs because they still have a ton of them on the defensive side of the ball. But I do think, it'll be interesting to see what direction they go at free safety. If you look at the roster, it's, Jalen Watkins, who missed the entire season with a knee injury, and I guess Rayshon Jenkins. See whether or not he can play that spot that I'm not sure is entirely natural for him. And then, of course, at linebacker, just trying to find some depth there and a defensive tackle. You get Thomas Davis. He's older, but he's a heck of a player if he can stay healthy. No question about that. But it's the interior of that defensive line. And I don't know if that's just, the idea that guys that, are young and were draft picks last year, like Justin Jones, and if he's the one that's going to make that step, but you still got a second defensive tackle you'll have to figure out there too. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. If they're just waiting out in Ndamukong Suh here in free agency until the number is right for them. We all know if you want to do it, you can create cap space. It's not hard to do. You convert to signing bonus. You're able to prorate that over the course of a couple of years instead of a straight salary. So it's kind of something I'm keeping an eye on if that's what Tom's doing here,
It's a great point.
We're going to see that. Yeah. Just to hit that, because I thought it was a great point that you made in terms of how each team approached it in the AFC West.
Well, too, Money, you look at the draft, and defensive line obviously is the strength, and there's a lot of veteran defensive linemen still out there. So you just wonder how the dominoes are going to fall, 7 days from now in that first round. And maybe that kind of sets the table for some of these veterans that get signed.
Right.
Even guys like Corey Liuget are still out there, guys who can make an impact in 2019. So to your point about safety.
I think you hit it right on the head.
Yeah, to your point about safety, too, there's a lot of, I think, starting quality safeties in this draft, maybe at the end of the first, going into the second and third rounds. So maybe that's a need for the, I was going to ask you at the end, just your thoughts. We just get into it now if you want. Number 28 overall. It's interesting because when you have a team like the Chargers where you're pretty strong at a lot of different positions, it truly is a best available situation because you're at the mercy of 27 other teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be somewhat similar to last year, not as extreme because I don't think you'll have one of those elite talents that can slip to you when 4 quarterbacks are taken. But we never assume that it's going to happen, right? We always just figure, well, they're not going to take Drew Lock or they're not going to take Daniel Jones or, man, could Jarrett Stidham really sneak into the back end of the first round? But then it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Then it ends up happening, and that's how you end up getting a linebacker that should have gone in the late teens, slipped you at 28. It's how you get a safety, like you said, or maybe a corner. Maybe a Greedy Williams slips all the way to 28, and you're like, okay, well, let's look at last year. Barrett was out. We rolled with Trevor Williams. He was solid. He got hurt. Then we got Michael Davis playing after Trevor Williams was healthy in the playoffs. And is that something we're good with going into 2019? I don't know. And so I think a lot of it's going to revolve around those quarterbacks and what ends up slipping. Because, like you said, it's a deep defensive line class. So if you do want to go after someone like Lawrence, just that giant body that can eat up space and help get some push into the pocket on passing downs and can help stuff the run that you don't see those guys a lot anymore like we used to. Or, as you said, starting caliber safety, but I think even more than safety, corner, just because of where players are graded. I think corner stands out to me a little more. If Murphy's there, if Greedy Williams is there, if Brock Yassin is there, I think that's one where they might focus on a little bit more.
I wouldn't hate it. And you know what? I think, too, when you have a pass rush like the Chargers, you can never have enough good corners, right? We've seen Desmond as a true nickel. DJ's talked about him becoming a safety at some point in his career. Who knows? But if you
look, I have to, man. I think that's – and look, DJ obviously knows a ton more than you and I do, so who the heck are we to talk about it? But, man,
sure.
The nose for the ball, the ability to diagnose, the angles that he takes with the speed that he has been clocked running. He's such a smart player. To me, it makes so much sense to have him up there. But, I understand. I brought it up to Coach before, and he wasn't happy I did. But he made a great point. He's like, yeah, you might be right, but, man, that's one of the best nickel corners in the league. I don't want to take him away from there because now what do I do at the nickel corner spot? So, and you just said it, with the way, offenses are deployed nowadays, you got to have that nickel. You have to, or you're toast. So I get it. I get why it's a tough decision to make.
Another name, when I spoke to Matt Bowen at the Combine, he predicted Derwin, like this was like March 1st of 2018. He goes, all right, we're doing this March 1st, but I'll just predict Derwin James of the Chargers at 17 overall. So I was like, all right, man, if you do it again and you predict it right, we'll get lottery tickets. He said right. Julian Love, cornerback of Notre Dame, to the Chargers at 28. He said maybe not first round potential yet, but just wait and see what happens. So I got my eye on Julian Love as well, Money.
Yeah, and look, I think again, people because defensive line is so flashy, and corner really isn't. But we know how important it is. I think that's what's getting all the attention. And clearly, you lose Phylon, Square's a free agent, Legion's a free agent. I think that's why so many people are attaching that position. By the way, let's not forget about the least sexy position in the draft, offensive line. We know what that offensive line looked like last year and how it got away from them there toward the end of the year, specifically that Saturday nighter against Baltimore. So, you could see some talent slip to them, and I think that would be very hard. I wouldn't be surprised if, and that's the one thing, why does Tom Telesco do such a great job in the draft? Because he doesn't ever draft for need. He always takes the number one guy on his list. And that's how you win drafts. Whomever it may be, whatever position it may be, that's what they're doing. And it's how they got Mike Williams when they already had Tyrell Williams, who was coming off a 1,000-yard season, and Keenan Allen on the team. But he's like, oh, whatever, man. Yeah. Mike's that good.
Well, and he's also said, Money, he's like, I don't know what this team's going to need in 3 or 4 years. Right. So it's like, right. You're not drafting just for September 2019. You're drafting for 3-4 years down the line because you got a football team to worry about. You're not like, for us, I feel like we're plugging holes in April and May and be like, we needed this, so we're going to draft this. It doesn't work that way. And it's never worked that way for Telesco.
That's why like a Cody Ford or a Bradbury, if those guys slip, it won't surprise me at all if that's what he does. Like, whatever, man. We feel good about Forrest Lamp coming back. Boom, let's plug in Ford. He can play tackle, or you draft Bradbury, shift him over to guard, and Pouncey's still your center, and you're good. Like, that won't surprise me. Like, I think that's the thing that's tough about projecting the Chargers pick, because that's it. We don't know what their vertical looks like. I don't even know if Tom runs a vertical or not, but if he runs a vertical 100 or vertical 150, whatever it may be, that's who they'll draft. Because that's what they've done every year.
Yep, well said. And they've had a great track record of doing it. I think if you take out Melvin Ingram in 2012, who's a Pro Bowler, Telesco has drafted an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler 6 straight years. He's 6 for 6. Desmond King was the All-Pro 2 years ago, coming out of the 5th round. So, I mean, from rounds 1 to 7 and undrafted free agents, Tom knows what he's doing, bottom line. All right, Money, you know what? No, let's just buzz through these because this is the part of the schedule where the Chargers have 5 divisional games over the last 7 weeks. We just talked about the Raiders. Mexico City, the Chiefs, speaking of drafting good players, you got to draft good players because we know Patrick Mahomes is going to be a thorn in the Chargers side for a long time.
Yeah, and, interesting to see what they're going to do on that defense. No Houston, no Ford, but now we're hearing some rumors about them and Frank Clark, that they may be interested there. And I think that would be an upgrade, and that would still provide some issues there. But, they got Tyrann Mathieu back there. They let go of Eric Berry. That'll be a different look. I think the world of Mathieu, dude's so awesome, such a great playmaker. But really, that game comes down to Pat Mahomes and just trying to don't let that guy beat you. Don't fall behind like they seem to fall behind the Chiefs, every year. And then they managed to claw back. And then, last year finally got over that hump. But man, you just cannot play that team like that. They're too good. So I think it's very similar to last year. This division's going to come down to these two teams. And for the Chargers, they had it. They got that huge victory on Thursday night. They had a chance to win that division, and unfortunately it fell apart, against Baltimore at home. So it's a huge one to make sure you win your home game. Unfortunately for the Chargers, their home game against, their cheap rival, pardon the pun, is going to be, in another country. But them's the breaks, and, they'll just have to deal with it and train in altitude, man. I'll see you in Colorado Springs.
That's right.
Hope that that those guys get winded and Andy Reid doesn't feel like dragging his team to altitude to train to get ready for it, and you can burn them out.
Yeah, and this is the game before the bye in week. Do you like the late bye, week 12?
I do. You know what? I do. I just, I don't like the early bye. That's for sure. So if you tell me I can either get the early bye or the late bye, give me the late bye. Last year was ideal, right? Smack in the middle of the season. You could not have asked for anything better. So I guess that's just kind of the way I look at it. It is week 7 or week 8, or you're going to have to take the earlier take, and I'll gladly take it late to give these guys a breather.
Yeah. Coming out of the bye, week 13.
They kind of get that, they kind of get the mini bye too, right in the middle of the season with the Thursday nighter.
Yeah,
so you get that mini bye in there, and then a couple weeks later you get your late bye.
Yeah, that's important to get that mini bye too. And I realize that you have to sacrifice the Sunday to Thursday too. I think it's Packers then Raiders 3 days later, but that mini bye in the middle of the schedule is going to help. And coming out of the bye, you go to Denver. It didn't mean anything. Week 17, the Chargers won 23-9. Then week 14 at Jacksonville, a team, I don't know what to make of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Money. I mean, if you told me it was Jags Chargers going into 2018, I'd be like, oh, this is a game. Maybe this is a primetime game.
Yeah, now, well, look, we don't know what Nick Foles is going to be. Is Nick Foles an emergency quarterback that's good for 3 or 4 weeks, or is Nick Foles someone you can play a full season with? Was it just magic between Peterson and Foles? And those two guys had one of those rare coach-QB relationships where they were on the same wavelength and were able to make magic together. Don't know. Just do not know, because you think about how the season started for Foles last year, it was a mess. Then he settled in, had a strong finish. So not sure what he's going to look like under a new coach, specifically Marrone, and what they're able to do together. Don't know if Leonard Fournette's going to, wake up and mature a little bit and be the runner that we saw for the majority of his rookie year, as opposed to his sophomore season, where he was a mess and was a mess off the field as well, and seems to still be a little bit of a mess off the field. And as talented of a guy as he is, we know what Tom Coughlin's like. You don't put up with anybody's crap. So, that'll be an interesting development to follow. The defense, we know how good it is, but no more Malik Jackson. Calais Campbell's a year older. Like you said, I don't know. But all I know is I hate thinking about it because of how that played out in 2017. Yep. And how big of a game that was that kept the Chargers out of the playoffs that year when they picked off Blake Bortles twice in the final 5 minutes and still managed to lose.
That game, and then last year, we talked about earlier, that Denver game, just 2 games that the Chargers could have been the #1 overall seed had they beaten the Broncos, and they would have snuck into the playoffs. Over the Buffalo Bills, who they beat by 30 that year, and got in the wild card in 2018. So week 15, Minnesota, Chargers beat Kirk Cousins at Dignity Health Sports Park when he was a member of the Redskins 2 seasons before in December. The second Sunday Night Football game for the Chargers, and it's the 4th that we currently know of, because that week 16 game against the Raiders, that could potentially be an NFL Network primetime game perhaps.
Right. Vikings are nasty. Defensively, they are nasty. Wide receiver-wise, might be the best duo in the league. It's certainly in the conversation. Tough team to deal with. And I think they're going to bounce back this year. I know Kirk takes a lot of incoming. I am glad that it's in prime time because it does seem like the bigger the stage, the worse he performs for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that is such a good team, top to bottom. And that's going to be a tough one. And let's see, they wear purple. It's late in the year. It's a primetime game. It very well may decide the fate of the Chargers. May the color not be as imposing and detrimental to their Super Bowl aspirations as it was this past season.
Yes, good call. Good call on that. What do we got here? Week 16 versus Oakland. We talked about the Raiders. We don't know yet. And then week 17, these are always interesting because it could mean absolutely nothing. I think the schedule makers.
It could mean everything.
It could mean everything. And you know what? It could get flexed. I mean, this is at Arrowhead, December 29th, 10 a.m. It's a CBS game, but it could mean something.
Cannot get flexed.
Yeah.
Right? Cannot get flexed because don't they play them all at the same time now? I guess what you're saying is it could get pushed back. But remember, any game that has playoff implications, they want them all played at the exact same time now.
You're right. I guess I'm thinking like if it's like a winner take all, like last year was like Tennessee, Indianapolis. It's like the winner gets into the playoffs or wins the division, something like that. But you're right. It probably wouldn't get flexed because of that.
Yeah. So they'll keep those all the same. Yeah. I mean, look, you're going to Kansas City. It's going to be cold as all get out. It's the most hostile atmosphere that the Chargers face in any given season. And I suspect, barring unforeseen injury circumstances, these are the two best teams in the division. And I do think they're pretty darn even, as we saw last year when they both finished with a 12-4 record and each of them won a game on the other's field. I don't know why I wouldn't think it's going to be the same. That's a good team that's well coached, has the MVP of the league playing quarterback. And look, that's what it comes down to. You got to go through them. And if that's what you got to do to win the division, then go do it, and have home field throughout the postseason and make your way to the Super Bowl. But I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that the schedule makers did that. I would have much preferred that, well, I guess you can't because it's the international game, but, that it not be in Kansas City at the end of December because it seems like we always go to Kansas City in December. This will be the third year in a row where we go. And at least it's not a night game like we've had the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And, do you think the fact that they won there gives them a little bit of confidence going into 2019? Because, what was it, 8 or 9 in a row you lose? To win in the fashion they did in December on that stage, I feel like it's got to give them a little confidence to know they can go anywhere and beat anybody.
It's certainly nice to have gotten that monkey off their back. But obviously by the time they play that game, they will have 15 games of momentum or lack thereof to lean on in that particular contest. But I do think you make a good point because they won't have to answer the question. When they're sitting with Nance and Romo, they're not going to have to be asked, well, it's 9 in a row now that you have not won here. What do you got to do to get they don't have to answer it. It's, hey, talk about a game for the ages last year, and it conjures positive thinking, and positive memories. And I think that's a big deal for them because I know Philip hated answering those questions, but you have to ask them. So to not have to deal with that, I think is certainly a positive.
Schedule speculation with Matt Money Smith on April 17th. I love it, man. It was a blast breaking down the schedule with you. And I'm going to see you, I think, at the Pier next Thursday, right? You're going to be in the mix?
I will be there. We're going to be doing Petros, and I will be doing our broadcast from 3 to 5:30 there.
Beautiful.
As a matter of fact, for the big blowout party on the pier. So, yeah, looking forward to it, man.
This is going to be awesome, man. It was great catching up with you. Always appreciate the insight, and I'll see you next Thursday. And, again, congratulations to Peyton, your daughter. I know it's a big deal for you and the fam.
It is. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Chris. We'll see you soon, man.
And that's going to do it. My thanks to Money for joining me, and of course, thanks to you all for listening. Don't forget, if you like what you hear this offseason, be sure to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Please help spread the word. Have a great weekend, and until next time, I'm Chris Hayre.